Rev up your engines!
Well, don't say I didn't warn you, but I did. 2022 Toyota Tundras are out with their V6 twin-turbo engine. And guess what? They're having problems with the turbos already, and they're brand new. To begin with, it's a 3.4-liter engine, but they're advertising it as a 3.5. That the turbo wastegate aren't working right, so the turbos aren't working right. These are on brand new vehicles. Like I said, they should have stuck to the V8, trusted, run down the road, no problems. But no, let's put in a twin-turbo V6 engine in this big truck that has had nothing but V8s for a long time. Remember, back in the past, you could get a Tundra with a V6, but then they stopped making it. They didn't have what people wanted. The wastegates, what a job. One guy's got a picture of it to take the cab off in order to get to it to change it. They didn't make them to work on. One guy, Keith, from a Trigger Happy on YouTube, he shows his with 335 miles on it. It's broken already. He calls it a $60,000 brick. And they said it's going to be a month or more to get the parts. This is why I tell you, never buy new designs when they come out, even from Toyota, as far as I'm concerned. Heed my warnings. They come from 53 years experience with these machines. I've seen them come and I've seen them go. And I usually call them right. And in this case, I certainly did. They're having problems with them already. Tried and true design. Why would you go away from it? It just doesn't make any sense. Best laptop PSN. Scotty, please answer my question. What is your opinion of the Lexus GX series? Do they last as long as the 4Runner? It's the same company. They sell a lot of similar technology in the Lexus and Toyotas. The only thing is the Lexus parts cost more. If you have a fancy Lexus, sometimes the brake master cylinder, you got to buy the brake master cylinder with ABS module built on it. Some of those things are $1,700 just for the part. The 4Runners, they're like regular cars. You can buy just the master cylinder aftermarket for maybe $190 or something. You will pay more maintaining a Lexus over time. They all break as they age, but the 4Runners break about the least, and their parts are not as expensive as the Lexuses. Brian Prado says, Scotty, I woke up this morning to papers in my glove box in my 09 Camry button up and mouse droppings in it. What do you recommend me doing? Well, get a cat and put it in a car. Now, if you watch my video, there are actually anti-rodent ultrasonic devices out there that work. You can get them that work so you could hook up to the car battery. They don't use much juice, so it wouldn't drain your car as long as you use it regularly. Wouldn't really hurt anything. But they put out low and high frequencies because they found, but they had just one frequency like, ee. They get used to that, but if it goes, wee, 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 drives them nuts. So it has to have at least two signals to it to make it more obnoxious to the rodents. And it will chase them away. Now, cats and dogs can't hear that. I've had them in houses. My old house in Houston, I had about 8 of them hooked up behind the walls. The cat would sleep right next to them. Didn't bother the cat at all. Doesn't bother dogs either. But it drives the rodents nuts. So get one of those and stick them in your car. And make sure you don't have any food lying around. Like if your kids eat candy bars and leave pieces around, that entices them to come in and eat. They're generally only going to go there for 2 reasons, either warmth or food. And if you put that ultrasonic thing in, that generally drives them nuts and they'll run away. May 1943 says, Scotty, an hour ago, the big belt on my 95 F-150 6-cylinder 2-wheel drive shredded. I'm not a mechanic. I had it towed to my favorite guys. It overheated before I could safely stop. Bad news? Well, you never want to really overheat a car. But let's say your water pump broke, and then, of course, the belt will be shredded if it breaks and falls off. That's an old vehicle. It's a 95. So it's still cast iron. And it can overheat and take it. Now, modern cars are aluminum. Aluminum is much softer, and it bends at much lower temperatures than steel and iron do. It's a good metal. It weighs less. It's easy to cast and stuff, but it will warp. You never want to overheat an aluminum engine. But that one's cast iron. So it probably didn't hurt anything. Your mechanic can tell you the truth about it after he goes. But if you didn't drive it that far, odds are it didn't really destroy the engine like it would in a new one. Robo Ironic says, is there anything I can do for my 2.4-liter engine in my terrain to lessen the amount of oil going through? Should have bought stock in an oil company. You do the obvious. Always change the PCV valve. That could suck raw oil and burn it. You know, $10 part. Do that first. Now, if it's not that, our friend Bernie in Albuquerque, they got this oil additive. The oil can get dirty and carboned up. And modern cars like that, instead of having high friction piston rings to make them nice and tight, they have low friction for better gas mileage. But the low friction ones can stick, and if they stick in, they don't seal right. If they go in the grooves of the piston and don't expand enough into the walls of the cylinder, guess what? They'll burn oil because there'll be a space there, right? Well, Bernie's oil treatment, and it's called ATS, you can Google it, look at their website. They sell an oil cleaner that is absolutely phenomenal. If your rings are sticking in because they're low tension and they don't seal. You put this stuff in, you let it idle for maybe 15, 20 minutes at 2,000 RPM with your foot on the gas, put on some music or something. Then you change the oil and filter, and you wouldn't believe the amount of carbon that can take out of an engine. Turns out there's 3 different types of carbon, and those guys spent 7 years on supercomputers at Sandia National Laboratories figuring out which carbons are there and what chemicals get rid of all those carbons. It's amazing stuff. If that doesn't work, forget it. You'd have to rebuild the engine. That'd be the only way you could fix it. Lane eats fries. So do I. Why do we have Toyota Tacomas instead of Hiluxes? They like diesel engines more, so a lot of those Hiluxes will have diesel engines and they can run forever. Americans never particularly cared for diesel engines. One of the reasons they didn't import them here, but a lot of them have similar parts. And of course, in the rest of the world, a lot of times they have a little smaller displacement engines because we Americans want big, fast vehicles that run like stink, and we don't like slow things. So the other parts of the world care more about gas mileage, and they don't mind a little bit smaller engine if it gets better gas mileage. Chris Jr. says, what do you think of the new Toyota Sienna? Well, my son just bought one. They're marvelous vans, you know, but it was expensive. He paid like 50-something G's for that thing. They're not giving them away, but they're well made and they can last a really long time. He bought the hybrid, and the gas mileage in the hybrid for a van is absolutely phenomenal. It is a Toyota. They generally last quite some time. The only thing about all those new cars, and the Siennas especially, is, man, they're expensive. I'll stay with my old cars that I'll buy cheap and drive around for a really long time. You know, you can't beat buying a good used Toyota for a deal, at least in the past when they were a lot cheaper, because you buy a new car, it loses 50% of its value in a few years. Say you buy a Toyota like I do that's 8 or 10 years old, and I pay maybe 20% tops of what the original price was. So I paid 20%, but it's probably got 80 or 90% of its lifespan left. That's a deal. You're never going to get a phenomenal deal buying a new vehicle. It's just the way that it goes. You get a vehicle that can last 500,000 miles. You buy it with 100,000 miles on it for 20, 30% of what it originally cost. You're making out like a gangbuster if you get a good one like a Toyota. Well, they're even planning electric motorhomes now. Winnebago, the big builder, is planning an e-motorhome. What do people do in motorhomes? They travel all over the place, stay places, right? They say this has 125 miles of range. And that means, you know, it's going to be somewhat less than that, right? Well, if you're going to drive all over the country in a motorhome, and it's only got a range of 125 miles, man, you're going to be stopping all the time. Sounds like a really stupid idea to me. Now, the camper van itself is based on the Ford Transit. So let's say all they're doing is taking something that's already there, making it electric. Obviously, that's one of the reasons it would have such a crappy range. 125 miles for something that you're going to be driving around in and going places. What if there's no electricity when you're going out in the woods? Then you're really screwed. You're stuck in a van that can't go anywhere. And to top it all off, it's a camper van, so it's got stuff in it. Listen to this. The battery also powers the vehicle's water heater, heat pump, style air conditioning system, induction cooktop, and refrigerator. So guess what? The range is going to be even less if you're running all of that stuff. Man, I've run air conditioners off batteries, and let me tell you something. They do not last very long. You got an electric stove, and it's using that battery. It's going to use up a ton of energy. Really sounds like a stupid idea to me. But of course, they're all jumping on the electric bandwagon. Now, on the other hand, Airstream says they're coming up with an e-Airstream. It would help your gas mileage from your internal combustion engine vehicle that's towing the Airstream by running some of its own with its own electric power, so you'll be able to go a lot further. That makes a lot more sense than having an all-electric van, which is a really stupid idea. Now, the Airstream is called eStream. It can park itself because it's electric motors and make it easy to maneuver around and do stuff, but it's not driving itself down the road and only going 125 miles. And of course, it would be a lot less if you use any of the other electrical stuff. The company Thor trying to take it further. They realize, like I do, 120 miles isn't crap for a camper van. The Thor company is working on one with an electric fuel cell that can go over 300 miles because it doesn't have all the heavy battery crap, and the batteries have to be recharged. It'd be using a fuel cell. And interesting enough, this Thor's vehicle with the 300 plus mile range that they're planning on is also based on a Ford Transit. Making a Ford Transit an electric vehicle with batteries, maybe a pretty stupid idea. Short range, 120 miles, but taking that same Ford Transit van, turning it into a fuel cell vehicle and going over 300 miles, that makes more sense. Of course, you're going to have to deal with the fuel. If they're hydrogen, or what are they going to run on, ammonia? And there has to be an infrastructure. So the whole thing is based on infrastructures that don't actually exist today. So, you know, we're still talking way in the future, but really, when you think about it, an RV that can only go 120 miles an hour sounds like a really stupid idea. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.